Hi, everyone. It is your host, Vernita Howard, the founder of SWAT, which is Survivors with a Testimony. Tonight, we're coming to you to spread awareness on sexual assault awareness, which this month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We wanted to come to you and talk to you and explain the difference between what sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, um, consent, not to consent. We want to come and just have this conversation so you'll understand that when we're out advocating, it's not as easy as it look, but we want to make sure that you have the information. And if you don't, we're here. It don't matter which organization you go to. We're all here working together. We can't do it by ourselves. So we come together to bring you awareness. I'm going to let these ladies introduce themselves and what they do to you. Coach.
Hi, great afternoon. Thank you, Vanita, for having me. So, my name is Coach Centrisa Wilson. I am a certified trauma recovery coach, and I specialize in helping people who are stuck coming through trauma. I am also a survivor myself. So, when you're a survivor, we're all one. There's no title. It doesn't really matter if you have a title or not because we're all survivors. We've all come through the process. I am also the CEO of Inspired by You, which is a company where we offer services to help those heal. And then as they're healing, they'll inspire others to heal because they're inspired by you.
All right, Miss Nisha.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Bernita, for having me. And it's nice to meet you, Ms. Santrisa, and everyone who's joining. My name is Nisha Himes, and I am the founder of GROW Foundation. GROW, standing for Girls Recognizing Our Worth, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization registered here in Virginia, as well as my native state of New Jersey. We assist victims and survivors of domestic violence with rebuilding their lives after abuse. I am a survivor of domestic violence and have been an advocate in the community for years at this point. And I know that there's a lot of intersection between sexual assault and domestic violence, which I'm sure we'll get into later in the conversation. I also work for a local police department in a special victims unit as a domestic violence outreach liaison. So being in that position and within that unit has allowed me to delve more into the world of sexual assault and violence. So I'm just grateful to be here and thankful for this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Again, as I stated before, if you're just tuning in, this month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And so many will ask, why are we talking about this? And, you know, our organization deal with domestic violence. A lot of times sexual assault ties into domestic violence. And so myself, I am a survivor of domestic violence. So I want to have this conversation, and I want you to know that you're not alone. I don't want anyone who's going through or have been through to feel that they should feel ashamed, they should feel guilty, because you shouldn't. These conversations are not easy to have, but they're needed. So we're going to dive right in. Miss Nisha, can you tell our audience what domestic violence is?
Sure. So domestic violence is a pattern of control, manipulation, intimidating behavior that is inflicted from one person to another, usually in a household, oftentimes intimate partners, but it does occur between household members as far as parents, children, siblings, grandparents, grandchildren, things such as that. So there's the intimate partner violence where it's a romantic couple or formerly romantic, and that doesn't just extend to heterosexual relationships. It extends to the LGBT community. It doesn't just extend to where the male is the aggressor and the female is the victim. It is often vice versa as well. It can include a pattern of that intimidating behavior. It doesn't just encompass physical assault, oftentimes, though it does escalate to that, but it includes the verbal abuse, the emotional, psychological, financial, immigration, religious, sexual, so many different forms of abuse that I'm sure we'll get into, but that's domestic violence in a nutshell.
Okay. And Coach Centrisa, can you tell our viewers what sexual is?
Yes, so sexual assault is the unwanted sexual contact between um, one person. So it's whether it's touching, whether it's harassment, whether it's intercourse, whether it's coercion, it's just not giving consent at all for any type of sexual manner to happen to a person.
Okay, I'm glad you said something about consent. So, one of the questions that has been asked, so in the state of North Carolina, there was a bill last year that they had on the table that is Senate Bill 563 that you couldn't stop if the sex in the middle of it.
Mm.
So, if, can one of you educate our viewers on what consent is?
Look, I'm like, if I didn't say yes,
So, what
you
constitutes
know, I
consent?
mean, like if it's, and coach, you can correct me because I'm all like layman's terms, and I'm just like, look, if
I think
if
there's both of us.
yes, if consent has not been expressed, if it has not been yes, this is okay, you know, then you have to watch body language too. Just because somebody
Mhm.
doesn't say no, if you're moving forward with an act and the person is crying or they're tensed up or they're like frozen or whatever, that doesn't, you don't need a no for it to not be consent. You know what I mean? So
Right.
And I think what people fail to realize is that at any given time, even if you said yes, you could turn around and say no. And
right.
so your consent is now rescinded, right? Because I changed my
Mhm.
mind. I don't want to do it. You still can't go along with it. And I think some people fail to realize that. And that goes back into the coercion of it because people coerce. They're saying no, then they say yes, and they really don't mean it. And then they change
Mhm.
their minds and say no. That's still a violation.
Right.
Okay. So let's just I believe in keeping it real
Hmm.
with our viewers. I could get up here and sugarcoat things all day. That's not going to help somebody that's going through something
Right.
or someone who is unsure if this has happened to them or what their steps should be. So, say for instance, a married couple,
Hmm.
um, he tells her no, because oftentimes we say, well, he done it to her, but let's just keep it real. It ain't all the men either.
Right.
Okay. So, say it's a married couple. He say no, but she's in the mood and she proceeds forward with it. And he's telling her no, and she still continues to go forth.
Hmm.
Um, and even with her applying, pressure, and he said, no, I don't want to. But she says to him, you're my husband. You supposed to take care of me. You know, um,
Hmm.
we'll use the Bible quick, you know, the and she start quoting scripture. What do you say then?
It's still a violation,
Right.
even though it's marital. So there is a such thing as marital rape. I have experienced it of course, from my stance of being the victim and being pregnant at the time. And it was like he was ready, I wasn't. And I wound up delivering my son at 24 weeks gestation. And
Hmm.
so I never, of course, you don't report because, again, I've spoken to people and I say a lot of times we don't realize that we're being violated because of the lack of knowledge that we have, right? So
Right.
when
Mhm.
I trained to be a sexual assault advocate, I learned that I'm in class like, wait, I was violated, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, it's still that's still not consent. That's still a violation. That is still marital rape.
Right.
Okay. So, um, we want to put it out there, so everybody understand. No means no.
Right.
Yes.
Married or not, no means no.
Right.
So can you ladies tell me like what's the difference between sexual violence, sexual assault, rape, sexual harassment?
So, because like my specialty is domestic violence, and then in getting into the world of sexual assault, and sexual violence, I actually talked to some of the officers that I work with because I wanted to make sure that I'm giving the correct information. So I took notes. So I said, I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. So as it was explained to me, all right, fondling is the touching of the body with no penetration. I was told sexual assault and violence are synonymous. It often includes like the physical act. So that can include domestic violence, rape, physical touching. She said harassment, and more of like the advances, the words, the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, like, oh, come just sit on my lap, or if you do the quid pro quo, if you do this, I'll do that. That's forms of sexual harassment. So rape, sexual intercourse that occurs through force, threat, or intimidation. Some or all of those elements.
Okay.
And Coach, let me know if I'm missing anything.
No, I think I took notes too. So because I was like, I do not want to give the wrong information. But no, you're right on point in regards to what I had. And you explained it so much better. I would have been a little technical.
I was like, yeah, I got my little notes. I was like,
so when I tell you, so if you guys can see what I have, it's like a whole book. I'm like, look, I want to make sure, the information is, again, I know when I went through, I didn't believe that everything that I was going through was domestic violence. Especially when I knew the abuse, like the physical was domestic violence, because the officers was coming out to the house. Right. But the other things that was happening, I didn't realize that was abuse as well.
Right.
Especially the financial abuse. I really didn't realize that. I just thought, hey, this man is trying to take care of me. He's taking care of the finances. And so let me make this clear, because I don't want anybody to think, oh, if my man taking care of the finances, then he's financially abusing me. No.
Right.
Our money went into a joint account. I had been in several car accidents, and I got an allowance. I didn't have a spending problem. I didn't have a drug problem. He just allowed me. And when I look back, a majority of the money was mine, but I only got an allowance a month. And out of that, I had to purchase makeup because of the abuse. I would have to purchase things. So technically, you just gave me money to cover up what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I always want to make that clear, because I don't want anybody to think, if you have a great man or a great woman that's providing, and if the light bill is due and you want to go get your hair done, and they make that decision and say, oh, we're going to pay this light bill, they're not financially abusing you.
Right.
Comb your hair in a ponytail, cut it off, whatever.
Right.
We can go any kind of way now. That's not abuse. They're making a decision that's a well-being for the family.
Right.
But if everything's taken care of and you're working and you're all putting in, and you don't have any habits, because we don't want to talk about it, but it's real.
Right.
If they're not supporting your habits, they're not financially abusing you. As long as home is taken care of and things are being taken care of that need to. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I know somebody will be on my inbox with, I think my husband, or I think my girl.
Right.
No, not what I'm so let me make that clear. Sexual exploitation. Let's talk about that just a little bit. Coach, do you want to tell us what sexual exploitation is?
It's the attempted. I gotta go to my notes, y'all.
No problem.
But it's the attempted abuse of a person, a vulnerability, like some type of sexual gain, whether it's monetarily, whether it's political, whether it's for a position. So they're trying to exploit you in a sexual way. If you do this for me, or you can't get this, or you can't get this position, or you can't go any further. So they're trying to exploit you, or if they have some type of something on you. a picture or something like that, to where I think it just kind of ties down to control as well, where they're trying to control you, that's in a sexual content for some type of personal gain or sexual gratification.
And Anisha, I just want to ask you this because I know here we had a situation where one of the young girls had sent a boy a picture, and he sent it to another girl, and she put it on Instagram. And then sent her a message to let her know that it was on Instagram.
How old are they?
Very young.
Are they
So
minors?
we got the police involved.
Yeah, there's that child pornography, but okay.
Yeah.
Right then and there.
So, I just wanted to put it out there. So I want my youth, those that follow me, to understand, when we was growing up, we didn't have all this internet stuff.
Right.
By the time you would have took a Polaroid picture of me, or I had a Polaroid, I had to figure out how to, take the picture first of all. And by the time we would get it around, it will probably take centuries. But now with social media, everything is at the snap of a dime. And so our youth need to understand that to you, it might seem like, oh, I'm just going to get back at that person, or I'm going to be mean to that person. But when you take their pictures, and I want my youth to understand sexting, because they don't understand, like, oh, if I take a picture of me and I send it, or I'm asking, about this in via text, via email. And see, children are smart. So now they got Snapchat. They got these little hidden messengers. So even if you pick up their phone, you're not going to see all this stuff. So as parents, that's where we got to get smart.
Right.
I'm not saying be your child's friend, but listen, because children tell stuff.
Right.
And my little sister, man, they had so many different things. So I had to make sure I act like I was the cool sister just to get the information. Now open up your tablet so I can see who you're texting, who you're calling, because they have all these hidden devices and, hidden apps. So as parents, we need to know about that, because if they get into the wrong person's hand and they start sending it out, you have something on your hand. And once it's out there, it's out there.
Right. Right. And it's a form of digital abuse as well. A lot of youth, teens use digital abuse to control or manipulate or intimidate their partner. So whether it's that you send me a picture, or I'm going to do this, or unless you do this, I'm going to text this picture out that you sent me in private. I'm going to post it on social media, put it on Snapchat, Instagram, or whatever. And then, like you said, it spreads. Like, we didn't have the internet, you know what I mean? Or using cell phones and stuff like that at the drop of a dime, where a picture could be sent within seconds, go viral. So it's a form of control. And when I talk to teens, it's like, look, I know y'all addicted to your phones, but you got to be careful what you're sending people, what you're accepting from people. I check my daughter's phone. I check who she texting. I check what they talking about. I check what app she got. I even check her browser. Like, what was you searching before we got here? You know what I mean? Like, let me check. Let me look in the cookies or whatever it's called. Like, let me go on here to see what's going on. Just because, and then doing what I do, working where I work, it's just mind blowing what kids are doing, what they're exposed to, and how many parents don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
So, and the reason, again, we have these talks, so I need people to know the statistics for this. Sexual assault, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience sexual violence involving physical contact during his or her lifetime. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 4 men experience rape between the ages of 11 to 17 years of age. 1 in 8 1 in 8 females and 1 in 4 males experience rape before the age of 10.
Mm.
And when I look at those numbers, we're talking about 10 years old. Those are babies,
Right.
elementary school babies.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't even know how to consent
Right.
to anything. But people don't care anymore either.
No.
And that's why I have these conversations. I even have them with I asked my daughters. I don't know about not my daughters, but my little sisters and my little nieces and nephews. Have anybody touched you?
Right.
Where did they touch you at? These are conversations we need to be able to talk to our children
Mm-hmm.
to get the information that we need. Have you been touched? We need to look at signs. If our child goes somewhere and they immediately shut down, why? If they're uncomfortable when certain people are around, why?
Right.
We don't need to talk at them, but we need to learn to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, they're our responsibility. And we don't want to fail our children. And even doing what we do in the community, we don't want to fail the ones that come to us from the community.
Right.
We want to open the doors and say, hey, if you need us, I'm here. Talk to me. Because if you have ever been sexually assaulted in any way or form or fashion, just like domestic violence, you kind of feel like it's your fault. You feel shame. These are things that people express all the time, but they shouldn't. You can't be held responsible for somebody else's actions.
That's so true.
And I know a lot of times I don't call people victims. I call them survivors, because if they're able to come tell it, they survived that storm. So as a survivor, I don't want to re-victimize you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I want to talk about tonight. Oftentimes when someone comes and tells someone this has happened to me, there are questions that's asked that should not be asked.
So true.
I always tell my team, if you get a call and you don't know what questions to ask, because each call is different,
Mm-hmm.
transfer them to somebody else that can really get the information we need so we can provide the help that they need.
Right.
I remember growing up, if you heard someone say that they got raped, the first question that you hear people say, well, what did she have on?
What'd you do? Yeah.
What did you do? And then they wonder why victims don't come forward.
Right.
That's true.
And I remember seeing an example like if you find out someone's in a car accident, you don't say, well, why were you driving to the grocery store? You know what I mean? Like, or if somebody gets robbed, well, why did you leave your watch on the dresser or anything like that? But when it comes to crimes like sexual assault, rape, violence, or domestic violence, it's just victim blaming it's like, it's the norm. It's what is expected. Well, what did you do for this to happen to you? Which is why a lot of people don't come forward. And it's like, it takes a lot to come forward to say something that is humiliating and traumatic has occurred, and you don't even know what to do. I saw a quote as it relates to from a rape survivor, and she said, when you're raped, sexually assaulted, your body is the crime scene. It's the crime scene you can't walk away from. And I thought that was deep, because it's like, damn, you can't. And the first question somebody asked you, well, what did you have on? Like, it's whether you had on pants, sweatpants, a skirt, a dress, naked. It doesn't give you the right. It doesn't give anybody the right to still violate you.
Yeah.
Right. And then a lot of times people will say, well, when they're being re-victimized, well, not just what did you have on, well, why did you go? And a lot of times, the person who takes advantage of you is a person who gains your trust.
Mm-hmm.
They have a secret motive, but you don't always know that.
Right.
Um, we see it a lot. We see the incest. We see, I mean, the incest is what really got me. Um, Having to deal with a case with that. And it's like, are you serious? Are you serious? Even following, I also followed a an incident that was going on, I think about 2 years ago, where the father had a daughter with his daughter, and he moved her away. They had charged him wherever they were with incest. He done whatever it took. He got out, moved her away, and to a new town or whatever. But I guess somebody, from following the show, I mean not the show, but the story, recognized who they were, reported them again. But he was having children with his own child
Right.
and didn't see anything wrong with it.
Mm.
Wow.
And it's deep because now you have a child who not only she don't have a dad, but now her children don't have a dad.
Right.
And do you know, like, psychologically, how that has damaged her?
I can only imagine. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm over here like, wow. Wow.
So, and that's why we have these conversations. When you hear sexual assault, a lot of people just think, oh well, he got raped or she got raped, and they just treat it as if it's nothing. But can you imagine what that person is going through that has been raped or sexually violated?
and then to have nobody believe them or blame them.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I think that's what, and I always say, being a survivor, and just my experience, and I don't mean to laugh. I just have so many stories, right? So I just remember when I went through my major sexual assault, and I say major because again, when you don't know that you've been violated, you only think it's one. When you learn what the violations are, then you learn that okay, I've been re-victimized over several times. So my assault that I talk about, when I was telling my family in regards to the assault, it was kind of like, are you sure you just didn't want to, have intercourse with this person, and you wasn't just doing something? And it's just kind of like where is that coming from, right? Because
Hmm.
it's just kind of like, do you know what I just went through? And so to even ask that question, and it's already the pressure of coming forward, whether you will, whether you won't, dealing with um, having to commit to the judicial process,
Hmm.
because once you commit, you really can't back away. You have to go full forward when you decide that this is what I'm going to do, because now they're going to invest in your process, your court process. And so that alone for a victim is a lot of pressure that they may go through. I mean, thank God that they have sexual assault advocates who are there to walk with you through the process, who will go, to the hospital with you, who will go to court with you, who will go when you go to report. So thank God you have that support system that'll be there with you, and they're non-biased, you right? And so it's just some people just say, I always say, people say the darndest things sometimes, because until you can actually walk in a person's shoes, which we don't want that to happen to you, you should be very mindful about the things that you say. In my training of being an advocate, one thing that we did on the hotline, I don't probe you with questions, right? I have to sit there. The only questions that I'll ask is, are you safe? Is it a good time to talk? And I
Mm-hmm.
let them lead the conversation because we've already lost our power when the assault happened. So it's not for me to give you 21, 30 questions when mentally I'm probably not even tapped into what you're saying. I'm still focusing on what happened to me. So I can't even give you a definitive answer sometimes, right? So you have to be mindful. Don't if you wind up in that situation, be very sensitive that you're not re-victimizing the person by probing them with questions or
Mm-hmm.
questioning what they went through or questioning the situation, because now you're causing them to lose power again just by your questions.
And one thing I've learned from this, sometimes being quiet, you get more information.
Mhm.
Um, when they're ready to talk, they're gonna open up. Um, when you go through so much, a lot of times, because everybody has shut you out when you came to them, or try to tell them what you went through or what you're going through, people will say, well, I wouldn't go through that, or that couldn't be me, until it happens. you know. Um, and I tell my people that do intake, listen, they're gonna give you so much information because, for one, they made that call.
Right.
But if they're not ready, just make sure they're in a safe environment. That's it. Your main thing is, are you safe? Is your abuser around? If they say yes, let them talk. If they can talk, you jot down as much information, you get a location, that's it. We can always follow back up. The way our systems are set up, their number is going to show anyway. Even if they block it out, it's still going to come through. So we have that. So you're right, coach. Don't probe them. Don't make them, because if you do, you're gonna push them away, and you might push them back into their abuser's arms. Because nobody believes me, or I don't have the power or the strength to even go through this. So we don't want to take that away. We want them to come forward. We want them to know that they're survivors.
Right.
You know, um, the streets want them to feel like a victim, because as long as you feel like a victim and you constantly consider yourself a victim, you're gonna keep going back. It's not gonna be any better. But when you train your mind to think otherwise, you'll start doing, okay, I'm a survivor. I've survived this. I can get through this. But if I always tell myself, well, I'm a victim, I'm gonna eventually want you to feel sorry for me. But I need my strength from somewhere. So if I look at myself as a survivor, no matter what I'm going through, look, I'm gonna come out pushing, fighting, doing what I need to do to make sure I'm good. So sometimes, I even, because I work in a daycare, I teach my children, don't say I can't. You know, so many people are programmed, I cannot do this. I can't.
Mhm.
No, I will try. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I will try. I can. But don't say what you can't do. You can't do it, because as long as you got that mindset, you're not going to push to go through. But let's get back on topic. um, so we've talked about the sexual assault, we talked about the sexual harassment, we talked a little on incest. Let's talk about rape. Um, either of you have any feedback on, someone comes to you about being raped? What do you say? What do you do? And say they say, for instance, listen, I was raped. I don't know if I want to press charges because I don't want to go through the judicial system. They're going to fail me anyway. You
Right.
know, if they have that mindset, what do you say to them?
Well, for me, and just being educated in that area, And knowing someone who's not recently, probably like within the last year, who've been sexually assaulted, um, I normally give them their options, right? The key thing is to make sure that they're okay. And so, for New Jersey, you have within the first 5 days, you can report to the hospital and you can get treatment, medical treatment. You could be, seen by a doctor as well as the forensic nurse. You also have the option to say, I don't want to report. And so what will happen is that you can opt to go John or Jane Doe. And so that gives you the option to have whatever DNA collected. They collect your clothes, they do certain swabs. If you ever feel uncomfortable in the process, you could say, I don't want this done. Prior to the exam happening, prior to all of that, we provide you with a sexual assault advocate who is there for you. That is your person who will be your voice in that room, who will be your voice through your process, who's trained enough to say, listen, I'm just here. If you want me to hold your hand, I will hold your hand. If you want me to leave, I will leave. If you don't want the police, we'll tell the police to go because you don't have to report. If you don't want the nurse, we'll tell the nurse to leave. If you want only this, but not that, we're there to be your voice, right? And that's for anyone who's 13 years old and up. And so we are there. And so what I would tell somebody is, I would tell them their rights and say, hey, you don't have to report right away. But if you want to go get checked out, right, there's a team that's set up, within the first 5 days, it's very highly likely that they can still collect the DNA. If you have the clothes still, if you have the underwear still, whatever the case may be, put it in a paper bag because it's breathable. They'll still be able to collect DNA off of it. And so it's just really giving them their options and again, making sure that they're okay in a good place and just be supportive for them and allow for them to make that decision because sometimes they don't know that they have options. And if it is a person who is in trouble, they have a warrant, something like that, during that period of time of your reporting, they are not allowed to say, well, they're reporting for rape, we're going to lock them up while we got them in custody. That they're not allowed to do that because you're not there for that at that time. They can address it at another time. Their optimum goal at that moment is to care for you and to make sure that your well-being is okay. So I always would say, if you want to go help healthcare, checked out, get whatever pills, whatever, STD, a preventative medication that you want to get. And it's no cost to you, during those first 5 days when you go to report, at least do that. And if you don't want to report, you can always do a John or Jane Doe and you could table it and sit on it for a few years. They'll give you a number and you can always go back to the state police and say, I'm ready to press charges and move forward. Or you could just decide not to do it.
Nisha, you want to add to that?
Yes, Coach pretty much summed it up. I did want to add, because I don't know if we did it in the beginning, like a trigger warning, because I know we're talking about some things that are can be really traumatic. And if there's any listeners who have been sexually assaulted or victims of domestic violence, just if you feel yourself getting triggered, just to please be mindful of that. Take a step away, take some deep breaths, honor yourself and your feelings. So I did just want to put that out there. But aside from what Coach said, just if you're the person that someone comes to, because a lot of times it may not be a trained advocate, it may just be a friend or a family member or somebody from school or something along those lines. So it's important to listen without judgment. Just listen. If the fact that this person came to you to tell you something as traumatic as being raped, I mean, you have to handle that with gentle gloves, not any of the victim blaming. Well, what were you wearing? Why did you go to their house so late? Why were you drinking? How much did you drink? Like Coach said, like you've been saying, Ms. Vernita, just listen without judgment. Accompany them to the hospital if they would like to go, to the police station if they would like to go. If they're not sure what they want to do, and you're not sure what to say to them, Google is free and Google is helpful. So if you got to look up sexual assault crisis agencies in your area, I know domestic violence agencies will oftentimes have a sexual assault crisis, advocate on staff too. So if you have to look up the agency in your area, the national agency, where oftentimes they'll have information for state by state, county by county agencies, then you do what you can with what you have. And if all you have is a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on and internet on your phone, then you can do enough. You can do something to make that survivor feel empowered. Let them know, this isn't your fault. You don't have to say any more than you want to. When you're violated like that, you feel powerless. You feel like your voice has been taken from you. So if it's okay, I'm here to listen, you can say as much or as little as you want. No, you don't have to go. We don't have to go to the police department right now. If you want to go to the hospital, I will drive you. No, I don't have to leave your side. So I think that's just important to let them know that you're not the enemy, that they can trust you, and that you are there to be them and be there for them in whatever capacity they need you to be.
Right. And that's, again, that is so important. Um, don't always say what you will do.
Yeah.
Because that's not you at the moment.
Right.
Be a listening ear and not a running mouth. Because if they trust you to come to you and tell you this has happened, you don't have to go tell Lottie Dottie and everybody.
Right.
Yeah. Look at it this way. They trusted you enough to come tell you about something that has happened to them, that has put them in a place of not knowing what to do. So I often say that in every interview: a listening ear, not a running mouth. As Coach said, as Miss Nisha said, Google will be your best friend.
Right.
I know when I'm doing these interviews, baby, I Google. I be somewhere everywhere trying to get information. So when we're relaying this information to you, we have accurate information. I'm not saying that Google is always accurate. As Ms. Nisha said, she got with some of her coworkers that works in that field. I'll make a phone call. If I got a question, I'm gonna ask. I'm not gonna just assume. So that's why this is important. And I know we talked about it, but Ms. Nisha, maybe you can help with this. How do they file a formal report if they decide, okay, I have to? How do they file a formal report of being sexually assaulted?
So I had the answer to this, and I wanted to make sure I was correct. So one, contact going to file a police report, like actually to a police department, but you can also contact the special victims unit of that agency. So even if you just want to know your options, because what will happen, and I don't want to misspeak, and so I will say that the caveat, it's may vary state by state, but it needs to be some sort of police report filed if that's the route you choose to take as far as going through the criminal justice process. So whether you go into a police station, whether you contact the special victims unit and then make an appointment to come in, then, those are some of the options that you have available. You can also contact the agencies that we were talking about, the crisis support agencies, who oftentimes have legal advocates on staff who will accompany you to the police department, will accompany you to, if you want to make the phone call to the special victims unit and you're just trying to get information on what your next steps are. And again, I think it helps to have a supportive person there with you, just because of what you may, in disclosing that information, it could be very triggering and traumatizing, re-traumatizing as well. Even if you call and ask if the department has an advocate that can assist. So pretty much it starts with just filing a police report, whether you go directly to the department or go through, ask to speak with their special victims unit.
Okay. Now let me flip the tables just a little bit. Say a person who is accused of a sexual violence crime, and what do they do? How can they So say for instance somebody accused them of a crime and they wasn't there, but and maybe they had a consensual, intimate being. And then this person gets upset and say, I'm going to say you done XYZ. Okay. And so now they go press these charges. How did that person become, what did the other person do that really has not done anything, but they're being accused of this crime?
So I was referred the same information to contact special victims unit. And I've seen where both sides are at different times, obviously, but where they're both being interviewed. So
Okay.
I'll see the offenders come in and they're going to speak with the detective and relay, because you have to have both sides of the story.
Mhm.
So I was just directed that they would need to contact the special victims unit, advise that they have been made aware that they are the accused or listed as the offender in XYZ crime, and that they would like to speak with the detective or whoever is managing that particular case.
Okay. So, all right, let's just give like some scenarios. And so my first scenario is um Tim and Ashley met at a party and they had an immediate attraction. Later in the night, Tim notices that Ashley is having a hard time standing on her own. Her speech is slurring, and it even leads to her vomiting. When Tim asks if Ashley wants to have sex with him, Ashley is unable to respond, and Tim go ahead with the action. Has he violated her in any way?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
because she did not give consent.
Right.
She was not in her right frame of mind to give consent. Um, and just to kind of go back just a little bit, I know you're giving a scenario. Even if someone shows up to the hospital and they're intoxicated, we will let them sleep off until they're able to give consent, because consent is key
Mm-hmm.
in regards to just in performing the act of intercourse or any type of sexual activity.
And I know, like, in one of the things that I had looked up, it says a person who is competent to give informed consent. Um, it's okay, but if a person is unable to give consent, if the person is incapacit, if the person is under the use of drugs, alcohol, physical or intellectually disabled or unconscious, and you make, you take, you have sex with them or whatever, they can't consent on their own. So if you do, you have violated them.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So now, what if what do we say to those who have been sexually assaulted and maybe have been through domestic violence, and now they are ashamed of what they've been through. They maybe never they maybe never reported it. So we do know a lot of our statistics we get are the reported statistics, but then there's a few that's not, there's a lot that's not reported. So what do we do? What do we say to that man or that woman, that girl or that boy who feels guilty because of what has happened to them?
I mean, I would tell them that it's not their fault. I'm sorry, Nisha. Did I
No,
cut
I
you
was going
off?
to say, go ahead, coach.
I would tell them that it's not their fault. It doesn't matter, what you wore, what the type of situation was. Like, it's not your fault. And, a lot of times I would focus in on self, forgiving oneself, because a lot of times that feeling that they feel is, self-condemning feelings, right? Because they feel like they could have did something. Maybe if I did it, maybe, whatever. And it's not your fault. Nothing that you do gives someone the right to violate you, your body, or your space.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Nisha, you want to add?
And I, again, second what Coach said. And just as far as the domestic violence component, you have to, I know it will come with time, but you have to forgive yourself. A lot of times, whether I talk to women, men, people from all different backgrounds, ages, I've talked to women who are like, I'm a doctor. How I'm too smart to go through this. I've talked to teachers, professors, college students, men, LGBT community, like so many different people. And they're just like, how was I so stupid? Why was I so weak? But it's like, domestic violence, it's not like you just go on a date and your first date, somebody punches you in the face and you're like, oh my God, they're abusive. It's very insidious. It's very gradual. And by the time you realize you're in an abusive relationship, pretty much already been in one, probably before you actually like realized and accepted that this is what's happening to you. At least that's how it was for me. So I think aside from what Coach saying, you have to, understand it's not your fault. It isn't, but you have to know that healing is a process. It's not linear. It is not like we're going to wake up and say, tomorrow's Wednesday. I think about 7:30, I want to be healed. That's not how it works.
No.
It's been 9 years for me since I left that particular relationship. And I still deal with triggers. I still deal with things that I understand is part of the healing journey. So I think you just have to be patient with yourself and be forgiving of yourself and know that, you can take your power back and that you can survive and you can stand up and put that crown back on. And, there is life after. That's the main thing. There is life after.
And I know for me, just to piggyback off what you said, I remember like I just wanted to shut down. I just wanted to I didn't want to talk about it. I felt like, if I said something, it was going to be damaging, not just to me, but to my children, you know, um, until I just had this wake up one day and started my healing process. And it was like, okay, I can do this. But it wasn't, as you said, over an overnight. I'm still going through the process. It's been over 20 years. Okay. Um, there are things that trigger me. The B word triggers me. I cannot stand it, period. That's still a trigger for me. Um, just certain things like I don't like people screaming at me.
Same.
You know, um, don't call me stupid.
Same.
Those are triggers where, people will be like, oh, girl, you stupid. No, don't say that. Like, they may be joking, but it's a trigger. And so, so I will say to the viewers, when you notice things and you notice a person attitude change, even if they don't want to tell you everything that has happened to them in their life, pay attention because body language and their attitude shifting lets you know something has happened. What can I do not to make you feel that way? And for me, one of the key things and part of my healing now is self-care days, taking care of me, a day where it is just about me, you know, and I'm not saying that works for everybody, but I make sure once a month I do something where it's just me, nobody else. I get in my car and Lord knows where I'm going, but it just be about me. Where I end up that day, I don't know. I don't set any set because if it don't happen the way I want it to, I'm gonna be disappointed. So if I don't have anything scheduled or set, guess what? Wherever I end up at, I'm just gonna be happy. Okay, Lord, thank you. I made it there. And then like once a week, I do something for me. If it's just treating myself out, if it's just going to get ice cream, whatever. For me, it's time to woosah. I gotta get me. And so I'll say that to anybody who's going through or have been through domestic violence or sexual assault. Find something that makes you happy. Something that makes you happy. And when you find that one thing that makes you happy, do it once a month. Take care of you. Because once you take care of you, and a lot of times we in our community don't like to seek therapy.
Mhm.
Therapy is needed. Just like we go out and shop for a car, we shop for a car based on what we need for our family.
Mhm.
Every therapist that you go to is not for you. Shop around. I've had some that I had just sat on their couch. I wouldn't talk and they wouldn't talk to me, but they got paid. They billed my insurance and they got their copayment. Okay. But it didn't help me. And now I have an awesome therapist. So I'll say to anybody, therapy is what you need.
Yeah.
A counselor is what you need. Sometimes when I'm going through, just to be able to pick up and say, listen, I need a technique that's going to work fast, you know, because I built that bond with them. So now they know who I am and they know what to say to help me get through my day. So now I've been, like I said, I fired several. It's okay. But I had to get what works for me. And until you find that therapist or that counselor that works for you, keep looking. If
Yeah.
the vibe is not there, it's not going to help you. But I
Yeah.
remember the my therapist that I got now. When I went and sat in her office, you know, I had so many bad experiences. And when I went and sat in her office, I looked at her. She looked at me. She said, "Listen, um, two things that's gonna happen. Either one, you're gonna open up and get the help that you need, or you gonna sit here and look at me and I'm gonna still get paid. It's truly your choice. I'm here to help you." And I'm looking at her and I'm like, this lady's shorter than I am, and I'm short, okay? And little tiny lady talking junk. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay with her. But when I start opening up and start talking to her, you know, the 30 minutes went by fast. And it was like when it was time to go, I didn't want to go because I finally had somebody who listened to me, that did
Mhm.
not judge me, and was going to offer me something that was going to help me. Not just somebody that said, oh, I'm going to send you over here so they could drug you up, because that don't help either. And I was real with her. I said, look, wherever you send me for medication management, make sure they're not trying to drug me up, because I ain't going to remember to take the pills, so it ain't going to help me. I need other stuff. So, you know, I had to be real with her. And I'll say that to our viewers. If you're going through, or if you've been through domestic violence or sexual assault, get you a therapist. It's okay. If you don't get where you need to be with the first one, go to the second. If you don't get there with the second one, keep going until you can get the one that fits your situation. And sexual assault and domestic violence is trauma based. And so you need someone who can deal with trauma. We don't want to look at it that way, but we got to keep it real. So, do you ladies have anything that you want to say?
No, I
Okay.
think that you, yeah, I think you've said so much, and it's so empowering. I am a firm believer of counseling, even when clients contact me for coaching services. If the need is greater, because I'm not a counselor, I'm a coach, right? And so if the
Right.
need is greater, I'll refer them out to get counseling before we begin the coaching process, because counseling is needed. Even I have a counselor, right? And I absolutely love my counselor. At first, I was like, why all this homework, right? She was sending me stuff and videos and clips, and I'm like, Lord Jesus. But it helps, right? It helps over time, and you learn. I always say every coach needs a coach, every counselor needs a counselor. Everybody kind of needs that person that they're able to speak to. And even, I know it's so tabooish sometimes in certain families and different cultures where they feel like you don't need it, but it is well needed. That's why people are trained to be there to support you, to help walk you through whatever your process is. And as Nisha said earlier, healing is a process.
Mhm.
And, I was on Clubhouse today, and someone came in, and I was in their domestic violence room, and they were like, I just keep having crying spells, is this normal? And she said, because people were telling her, you need to stop crying, it's been years. But it's okay not to be okay. I tell everybody that it's okay to say, today's not a good day, I can't do this today, I can't move forward today. You're still normal, we're still human. And when we understand that, then you'll understand that it's okay. Self-care is always key. It's always key. In Christendom, we see Christ always represented that very well. He always stealed away. He even processed his feelings when his friend died, and he stopped and he wept. So we have to learn that we need to, stop sometimes and process, get the help that we need before we try to move on, because, it's okay to be strong. It's okay to identify yourself as being strong. Especially now, my heart goes out to men, because I've seen men who have gone through sexual assault per se, and they don't want to report because they, feel like everybody's always looking and saying, but you're a man, but
Right.
still they're human. And so when you understand that, like, it's okay. We all have feelings. We all bleed the same. And so it's okay to get help. It's okay to go speak to someone. It's okay. Everybody has to go through a process, like you said, Vernita. Don't judge unless you've walked in that situation. I've been in situations coming up, and I was like, hearing my mom's story, and her ex used to beat on her, and you grow up and you're like, that'll never happen to me, until you in that situation, right? Because the subtlety of domestic violence starts out with, it'll be controlling. It may be harsh words at first. It could be a simple shut up at first, and you're just you kind of ignore it, or you say, don't say that to me. You kind of play it off. It's controlling your friends, controlling what you wear, controlling what you do, and it'll ultimately climax to the physical aspect, because all
Exactly.
the other boundaries have been crossed. So sometimes it's sitting back and reflecting. Don't say, oh, he loves me and that's why he's so protective, or oh, she's just jealous. Like, no, you have to pay attention to those red flags, those signals that'll tell you, like, uh-oh, something ain't right here, something about to happen. And again, because it starts off in subtlety. Nobody walks right up to you and hits you. Of course, no, you'll leave, because they have to gain your trust. And gaining your trust is putting on a facade by making you feel as if, oh no, baby, we was just arguing. It's okay. I didn't mean it like that. Baby, I didn't mean it like that. How people say, but you have to, stay aware, stay alert. There's a difference between someone bona fidely being concerned and someone actually just being trying to be in control over you. And if you find yourself in that situation, or you find yourself, get some help, talk to someone, call the hotlines. There's tons of hotlines out there. Rain .org is out there. They list all the states, the agencies, everything. You can always call them. All the hotlines are 24/7. You can always tap in if you say, hey, I want to get counseling, but I can't afford it. If you're working, a lot of times we disregard when our companies say we offer an employee assistance program. That program right there is very key. And I say that a lot of times because we hear it and then we kind of blow it off because it's always a free service and we never look into it. But when you call that line, there's counselors available 24/7 who's there to talk you through your rough patch for that moment, and then they refer you out and they give you about 3 to 4 sessions. And then thank God, you know, people have considered mental health, especially because of last year. So a lot of insurances have dropped their copays. Some have lowered their copays because mental health is key, and sometimes you have to seek out that help. They've made provision. Some services they offer, some counseling services are offered for free, depending on what it is. And you can always call, I know here in New Jersey, you can always call the crisis center, the regular line, and you can say, can you refer me to a counselor? And they will provide those counseling services. So, there is help out there for you. But again, like you said, counseling is very key, is very much so needed. You don't have to walk this alone. Iron sharpens iron. We're people, and we're meant to dwell amongst each other, to build each other up. And so you don't have to walk the journey by yourself. There is someone out there who could walk it out with you.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna read two of the comments from our viewers. One says, counseling is super important. It helps with owning and telling your truth, which is very true. And then another one say, yes, counseling is very helpful. This is all new to me, and I don't know how I will make it without the support and help. So yeah, it is. For me, I don't know how I will be able to sit here and do what I do in the community if it wasn't for counseling and if it wasn't for my therapy. I don't know how I would get through it.
Right.
I was that person. I blame myself. You know, I blame myself because I was busy trying to have what my parents had. I wanted my children to have the two-parent home. That's how I grew up. So I accepted a lot of things, and once once I got that power and I got my strength to say this is it, this is enough. Even after losing my son been beaten out of me, I went back. So it's easy for somebody to say, oh, I couldn't have done that. But when you go through abuse, a lot of times you're not in your right state of mind. You may look okay. You may pile on the makeup and you may get dressed and look nice on the outside, but you toe up on the inside. And the truth be told, I was so toe up for 21 years. It looked like I had it together. And I remember one of the young ladies that used to work under me, I was her supervisor. She said, Miss Howard, I never thought that I hear you preaching the word. She said, doing things in the community because you was mean. But nobody knew the baggage that I was holding on to. Nobody knew the hurt. Nobody knew the pain. So for me, lashing out was like just it. And just feeling like I had to control. So I felt like being me and, just having that control. I got myself together, but I was okay on the outside, but tore up on the inside. If they could have just flipped me inside out, they would have seen all the hurt, all the pain, everything that I was going through, and I was trying to handle it on my own. Truth be told, I didn't start counseling until 5 years ago. 5 years ago. I started 5 years ago and I've fired over 30 therapists. It was at a point that I would tell my mom, I was like, oh, I'm not going back, whatever. And she said, V, you ain't gonna never find nobody that's gonna deal with you. And so she began to say, is it them or is it you? But it was like the feel wasn't there. They just, I didn't feel comfortable opening up to them. And so, I know it's people that's listening. I know it's people. It's okay. You don't have to like them. They might not like you, but just go to the next, hire the next. Because at the end of the day, I know in North Carolina, we have Trillium. That helps, especially if it's causing like mental health issues. So Trillium helps. If you're not a talker, if you don't like talking on the phone, they have it where you can text and they can have a counselor texting with you. As Coach said, Rain. Even our organization. If you don't want to talk, fine, text, because we're linked with so many. And I say this all the time: SWAT can't do it by itself. We're gonna do what we can, but I don't mind linking and reaching out and saying, "Hey, can you help?" That's why I make sure it's imperative when you guys come on and you're helping me to bring awareness. Tell about your organization, because we don't know where the viewers are coming from. And if they're in New Jersey, if they're in Virginia, why should I be the one trying to help them in North Carolina when I could say, hey, reach out to Nisha at Grove, reach out to Coach in New Jersey? That's how it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in this together.
Yes.
We had a viewer that says, I was emotionally abused for a long time and never knew it for 4 months ago because physical abuse started. So listen, a lot of people go through the emotional abuse, and I don't know. I've been doing things about emotional abuse right here lately, throughout the page, throughout my personal page. But I'll say to anybody, you don't have to settle. You have to know your worth. Emotional abuse to me is harder because you're emotionally attached and they may be emotionally detached. And you can come and express your feelings. And if they detach, they don't care.
Right. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Miss Nisha. No, go ahead.
The thing with emotional abuse, and it's so, I mean, the thing with domestic violence, like we talked about, it doesn't just start off with the physical abuse. There's domestic violence relationships that never involve physical abuse, and that doesn't make them any less abusive as the ones that do. Emotional abuse, like in particular with domestic violence relationships, love bombing is a big thing where, especially as women, we get so wrapped up in the affection, we get wrapped up in the flowers and the WYD text, like, what you doing, what time you coming home tonight? Oh, well, I'll be home about 7. Why? Well, I just wanted to talk to you, that's all. To the point where that behavior becomes a custom, so you find yourself always telling that person when you're coming home. And it's not that it gets beyond just being courteous, but it's being expected. Like, well, oh, you said you was going to be here at 7 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock. Well, where were you? Who was you with? You didn't answer my call. I remember my ex used to say stuff like, oh, you answered the call after 5 rings instead of 2. Well, who were you talking to? Why did you have to? Who were you on the other line with? Did you have to click over? But there was that grooming process in the beginning where I got accustomed to this, where I tell anybody, once they get you mentally, the rest is easy. Gaslighting, very real when it's a form of emotional abuse where the perpetrator uses it to make you question your judgment, make you question your perception of reality. I've talked to survivors there was one, her husband pushed her down the stairs, but at the end of by the time it was all said and done, he had convinced her that she tripped over a pair of shoes that she doesn't even remember being there. So he's like, no, there was a pair of the kids' shoes was here. You tripped. I tried to catch you. You fell. You owe me an apology because you accused me of pushing you. So now she's apologizing. I'm sorry. I accused you of pushing me down the stairs, when she knows deep down in her gut that he did. But you start questioning everything. It could be something as small as, babe, where's my car keys? I just had them here on the night table. And they're like, I don't know where your car keys are, when they know that they hid them on top of the refrigerator or put them on the dresser. So by the time they mysteriously find it for you and look like the savior, then it's like, babe, you wouldn't find your head if it was attached. So the next time you accuse them of something, I didn't like when you called me a bitch. I didn't like when you embarrassed me in front of my friends. Oh, just like you thought you put your car keys on the night table, right? Remember, I had to find those for you. So now you're questioning yourself, like, am I tripping? did I make this up? Am I imagining these things? But with emotional abuse, you don't see any bruises on me. A lot of the survivors I talk to, you don't see bruises on them anymore, but they'll remember that they don't like being called out their name. They remember they don't like
Mhm.
being called stupid, even in jest. They'll remember, like, when you're defensive. I'm happily married now. And there's even certain things, certain triggers that my husband had to learn, like even being with a survivor. It's like, yo, I like, don't tell me to do this, or don't, like, even if his tone is not going that way, I have to like recognize that, okay, am I being triggered, am I being defensive because of something that I went through. And I just think, I just want to add, in doing this work as advocates in our own right, the boundaries that we have to set for ourselves, especially being survivors, because that vicarious trauma is real, that compassion fatigue is real. Coming off work, doing this, doing it with our respective organizations, then doing calls like this. Even this can be draining. Like, it's empowering, it's impactful, but I know I'm having a glass of wine when I get off this call because I'm just like, it can take a lot out of you. And I understand that a lot of that has to deal with the emotional impact that stays with you for years after, and then taking in other people's trauma. As much as you want to help, it still takes a piece away from you if you're not replenishing yourself at the same time. That saying, if you can't pour from an empty cup. So I know I kind of went left from emotional abuse, gaslighting, love bombing to vicarious trauma, but it's where we are. The conversation's fluid. So
Right. I mean, and sometimes you have to tie in everything, Um, and it does. These lives can be a lot. And so it takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot to, just bring it and then keep it real. And so
I think that it was good. It's good information because you find a lot of survivors who say, I want to work the hotline. I want to come. I want to be an advocate. And so because they've been in that or because they're coming through it, they don't understand. I remember some nights I would come home from the hospital and just cry. And I was like, I had to say to my pastor, like, I don't understand how to do this, right? Because I gotta like when you're an advocate, well, for let me say, from my experience, a sexual assault advocate, and you present at the hospital, because I'm a volunteer and I'm not on staff as a full time employee. When I leave that survivor, I don't see them anymore, right? That's it. And so to leave with them being maybe in distress, I mean, we make sure that they have a safe place to go, but then after that, and it's very emotional. So I think that you talking about how emotional draining it could be is key, because a lot of times people say, well, I'm a survivor, I came through this and I want to be a survivor, I want to be a domestic violence advocate, but emotionally you have to be prepared for what's attached to it,
exactly.
even the training, because for me the training was so intense. I was like, sheesh, I've been victimized a lot of times. Wait, hold on, are you trying to tell me, so you start thinking about your life, and it causes you to think about your life, things that you've gone through, situations. I had no clue about marital rape until I trained through the program, right? Because in some cultures, you again, like you said, people use the Bible, right? So in some cultures, you feel like I'm supposed to because I'm married. And so when you start learning again and you start gaining that knowledge about your rights, at that moment, now you're human. So the wounds that you thought that were gone, or you thought you overcame, sometimes you're learning that I didn't really overcome it. I just kind of suppressed it and worked through it and processed through it. So now that I'm training, because this is what I feel my heart's passion is, because I want to do it. And so when you start going through the training, you have to know emotionally it will take a toll on you. It will, like and it's not even like me just saying it because I'm
mhm.
just saying something. I'm saying it because those days when you have to walk away from someone, they were crying, or you sat there and you've seen or you've heard the most horrific things, And luckily, with our crisis center, we used to have a debrief. So if I worked overnight in the morning, I was expected to call before noon to debrief about what I've gone through. Also, there was someone on call for me in case if I just came across the case that I couldn't process throughout the night. So that information was very, very, very important. I don't mean to go on, I'm sorry, but that information,
Oh,
it
no.
was very important because a lot of times people feel as if this is what they want to do. I have a heart to help people, but you also have to understand that it's going to take strength and an additional support. And there's times where you may be triggered because of what you've gone through, especially if you're a survivor wanting to help out other survivors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I thought, when I first started doing this, I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be easy, until I really got into it, and start being educated, um, and just when I tell you, it can be mentally draining because not only are you listening to other people's story, you're still trying to battle with, the things that you've been through. And, once you start developing a face in the community, they're looking for you to look like you got it all together.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
for me, even when I turn on the news, my dad say a lot, have you watched the news? It's depressing. Um, I remember, I think it was last year or the year before last, we had a domestic violence awareness event. Hardly nobody came. And then to turn the TV on the next day to a mom and children being killed
Wow.
right in the area where we had the event at. And so for me, it was mentally draining. And I'm like, God, did I fail then? Nobody really knows what we go through behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I do turn on the TV, or if it's somebody that I've been in, contact with, and then they lose their life, I'm like, well, God, I failed them. Nobody knows the pressure that we go through.
Right.
And I hear a lot say, once we help them or whatever, oh yeah, I think I want to do this. It's not easy.
Right.
It takes money, it takes time, and it takes a lot of your sleep away.
Right.
Would I trade it for anything in the world? No. But this calling is not for everybody.
Right. And
That's
I
true.
think it's important, like whether you're an advocate, whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're a prosecutor in the medical field or whatever, when you're working with victims, particularly victims of trauma, I think it's important to have that heart. It's important to know the boundaries when you need to step away.
Mhm.
I was in my abusive relationship when I went to volunteer for the first time at a domestic violence shelter. And I remember looking at women and thinking, oh, well, I'm not living in this shelter. I don't have a black eye today or anything like that. And thinking that, not that it made me better than them, but that my situation wasn't as bad. So I'm not nearly in need of as much help as they are because my situation is not as bad. And I think we have to get out of the habit of comparing traumas on who's worse. Trauma is trauma. Somebody drowns, whether they drown in 2 feet of water or 20 feet of water, they both
Mhm.
drown. Nobody's saying how much water is it. So I think we have to normalize, like, okay, trauma is trauma. And we have to know that if you don't have the heart for this work, like, you can be drained, you can get compassion fatigue. I've dealt with it, burnout, vicarious trauma. But when you have the heart for it, you have the heart for it. And then you got some people who's just in it. I don't know why. I don't know how you could just get into this line of work and really not be in it unless you have like a savior complex or something along those lines. But you have to be prepared for what comes in it. And as you said, Ms. Bernita, when you start having to face, sometimes, it's pressure. And I feel like sometimes you're expected to always be on. So for me, I go to bed with texts with pictures of bruises. I wake up, see pictures of them. I see it at work. I see it on my lunch break when I get off. And it's kind of like, when do you turn it off? But again, it's just knowing your boundaries and not just having other people respect those boundaries, respecting your own boundaries. So like you have your day a month. I say I'm not going to do any awareness or DV stuff, sexual assault stuff on Sundays. Like I just really try not to do that. And I box. And so boxing has been very therapeutic for me. So you have to have your thing, because otherwise you'll get swallowed up in advocacy. You get swallowed up trying to save everybody.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that you can't save everybody. But if you try your best, and if you plant the seed, maybe they won't leave today, but maybe 6 months from now, they're like, you know, I'm ready to tell my story. I'm ready to come out that I'm a rape survivor. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. Then you've done your job.
Right.
And also learn, I'm sorry, like Vernita said, if you know someone who is also in the field, who is also can help, you can't save the world, but you can delegate, and you can you can say, hey, I know someone who could, you could possibly, you can link them up with that person to take the pressure off of you, or else you're going to burn out fast. That's all I had to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so even, I'll say to survivors, even when you go through, find you something that makes you feel good. Emotional abuse can be one of the harsh ones, because that's an abuse that you don't see any physical scarring. But that could be one of the deepest scars ever, even though I can't physically see it, but just knowing that you went through it can hurt me too. Even in that, you have to set boundaries. You have to know your worth. You have to know who you are, and you don't have to settle. And a lot of times, as I think Miss Nisha said, we'll settle and we'll say, well, he's not beating me or she's not putting their hands on me. But those words cut deep. When they making you feel belittled, when they're making you feel less than what you are, no matter what you do. But when you look in the mirror and you see who they are calling you, you can't even see the true you, because your mind has been programmed on all the negative that you hear about you. That's not fair to you. So don't settle. And if it starts with the emotional abuse, it's going to lead, because eventually you're going to either, one, get tired of them saying this stuff about you and you're going to react, or if it looks like you're going to react, they might react and it can get worse. I don't ever tell anybody to just walk out and leave, because we all know on this panel, leaving is not always a good thing.
Right.
Without a plan. If you're going to leave, you need a safety plan. It's things that you need in a safety plan. You need you and your children's identification. You need your birth certificates. You need your social security cards. You need their medical records, yours. List of medications. And when I say list of medications, you need to know your dosage, the name of that medication, and all the instructions to it. And not just for you, but for those babies as well. If you're going to take your fur animals, you need their information. I mean, because with a fur animal, I didn't realize all the stuff that y'all do, those that have fur animals. But they got just as much paperwork on them as you do on you. And if you're going to take it, make sure you have that information on it. Start packing up clothes somewhere. So when you do walk out, sometimes you can only leave with what you have on your back.
Mhm.
But if you got your important documents, you can get help. But if you walk out without that, people can't verify who you are.
Right.
And most agencies, they need that information to even be able to help you. It is ways to work around it, but a lot of people, we just gonna put it out there. And I want people to understand. Sometimes everybody is not in these positions because they care. Sometimes some people is there because it's a job. Some of them just got to get community service hours. We just have to keep it real.
Mhm.
But then you got those that are like us that are passionate, that want to do a lot. But if you don't have the information, we can't help you. And I don't want you to just walk away and then not have what you need and feel like you're forced back into your abuser's hands because that's not fair to you.
Right.
That's true.
We do have the young lady that has been commenting. She says, my family and friends come to me like I am their counselor. And even though I am going through what I am going through, I still listen to their problems and try to give advice. But to me, it's not the same. But I always love to help. What would you say to her, Miss Nisha?
I would say I get it. Like when you have a big heart, you have a big heart.
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with helping people and being that sounding board. I think you just have to be respectful of your self care, respectful of, again, your boundaries, and respectful of what you need as you're dealing with everything that you're going through. You know, you can't pour from an empty cup, as the saying goes. So if it gets to the point where you start putting everybody else's before yourself, you kind of just got to take a step back. You know, you got to put yourself on that to-do list as well. You know, so if you're like, all right, I got to talk to this person, I got to talk to that person, give them advice. Okay, but are you giving yourself advice too? Are you offering yourself the same grace and care and concern that you're affording to other people? So I'll just say that's great. I know what it's like to have a big heart and to kind of just fill that up with trying to help as many people as you can, but don't forget you too.
Mhm.
Yes.
And that's important.
Yeah.
So as we begin to wrap this up, we're gonna recap a little bit on, the sexual assault. Again, this month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we have came tonight to give you information on it. One thing we did not hit is sexual harassment. Let's cover that just a little bit. Um, and we just want to make it clear so that everybody understands. Um, because most employees have a sexual harassment policy.
Hmm.
And so I do want to talk about that. And so y'all see me looking to the side because I'm looking at my notes. Um, but we have to be careful even on our jobs, making jokes. Um, what may not seem like a pass to you, but could be a pass to them. A sexual gesture um, that can make someone feel uncomfortable um, in the workplace. So we have to be very, very careful of that.
Hmm.
Do you ladies want to um, elaborate any on it?
I think that the key thing is that sometimes people get too comfortable. And so, sexual harassment is like an unwelcome sexual advance, right? So it could be a joke, it can be a statement that you make, and some people take offense to it. Some people are more sensitive than other people. Some people aren't. Your joke, what you might deem as being funny, is not. Especially now with social media and memes and things that go around, and people make things, and sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's not, right? And so you have to be very sensitive about what you say, what you're sharing, what you're about touching people. Some people are very touchy, right? They like to touch your shoulder, touch your arm. Some people like to touch. And so you have to be very mindful. Let me say this as well. Even in churches, I know when my pastor, when he would go to minister, he would say, "Is it okay for me to lay hands on you?" Right? Because some people, it's just, you have this a level of respect, and there's a level of respecting someone's boundaries, and their boundaries, their space, respecting what they hear, what they see, so yeah, I know that's not like the whole technical term of it, but it's really just any unsolicited sexual advance, right? That someone may say, whether it's for a favor, whether it's because they think that it's funny, maybe because they want a response. So you have to be very mindful in regards to how you handle that.
And if it makes you uncomfortable, your feelings are valid. You know
Yes.
what I mean? And as Coach said, it's some people may find it funny, some people may not. Just because Nikki might be cool with something doesn't mean Sarah is cool with it. So sometimes we'll say, it'll get brushed off like, oh, that's just the kind of person they are. They joke like that with everybody. But look, I'm not everybody. Just because she good with it doesn't mean I'm good with it and that I have to be good with it. So if it makes you uncomfortable, if it's those unwanted advances, then you have the right to speak up. You have the right to say something to that person. And if they don't stop the behavior, then to a superior. And if that superior doesn't do anything, then above them. I had a situation where a former employer I used to work for loved working there, and they had a client. He was very, what most called flirtatious, but he would say some things that were like really out of pocket, to the point where I'm like, okay, I need you to stop saying these things to me. I don't like it. I said something to him. I said something to my supervisor. My supervisor kind of was like, oh, he's like that with everybody, and then it got to be more and more and more till where my husband showed up at my job and had to have words with him. So then it wasn't until like months later, my supervisor at the time apologized to me. And she said, and this is a woman. She said, because he was like that with everybody, and the women, those particular women who was okay with it, would flirt back or whatever, it kind of just was like my feelings didn't matter. Because it's like, oh, well, he's joking. You're kind of taking it too seriously. But it does matter. So if it makes you uncomfortable and you don't want it, you have the right to not accept that behavior. And your employer is obligated to handle accordingly. Whatever that policy sees fit. If not, again, Google is free. We gotta get the news in here. What we gotta do? Who we gotta call? Who do I have to tell if it's not working here? Who do I have to say something to? So
exactly.
And I know it's not that simple. Sometimes if you feel like your job is on the line, but I think it's just important to know that your boundaries, your voice matters.
Yeah,
exactly.
and check your HR. I'm sorry. I was going to say, check your HR policy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times there's policies and procedures already in place. So when you feel as if your job is in jeopardy, they have it to where they have a certain protocol set up so that no backlash can happen in regards to you reporting. They should not terminate you. There are government programs that equal opportunity employment that you could contact if you feel as if your rights as an employee is being violated or if you're terminated because of such. So, again, check your employee manual. Sometimes we get those manuals and it's filled with so much information and we just kind of put it to the side, but it's a lot of things in there and tools that'll be able to help you if you're in that situation.
And I also want my college babies to know, those that are in college, check your policies at the school. If you feel like you have been sexually assaulted, sexually harassed, They have most schools have something in place. So check with them. Ask questions. It don't cost anything to ask a question. So
Mhm.
that's very important. So we're gonna begin wrapping it up, and Miss Nisha, we're gonna go with Miss Nisha and Coach. But we are going to encourage someone who's going through or who have gone through sexual assault and domestic violence. What do you say to them? Give them some tidbits, inspire them, uplift them.
Oh, put me on the spot. I'm like, okay. Uh, I do spoken word. I'll do a whole poem in here.
But glad you're going first.
No. I would just say we're here. You're not alone. As you can see, there's 3 very passionate women here on this call, and we are connected to equally passionate partners, community partners, members, agencies, things like that. So there is that wraparound support is here. We've all on this call survived something, survived trauma, and again, there's life after. So if you need anything, if you are in the Hampton Roads area of Virginia, and then we also assist with the South Jersey area, like Burlington County, Camden County, Gloucester of New Jersey, just contact GROW. Our website is www.growfoundationva.org. Also meant to mention this earlier, a great website that I love is www.womenslaw.org. It doesn't just service women, but it provides state by state, county by county legal, plain language legal advice. So it'll tell you how to get a protective order. It'll tell you where your sexual assault crisis hotlines are, your DV agencies, all of that, womenslaw.org. And they break down the law for your state, like in terms that the regular person, Joe Schmo, can understand. So just know that your story matters, your truth matters, and that crown matches every outfit. You don't take it off for anybody, nobody. And thank you for having me. And it's such a pleasure just to be here, on this and just seeing awareness and empowerment. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Coach?
Oh, it is my turn. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Bernita, for having me. And it's so nice to meet you, Nisha. So I just want to, let everyone know, like Nisha said, like we are survivors, right? We've survived. We have processed. We are, alive to talk about it, which means that we still have purpose, right? We have breath in our bodies and it looks rough. It may appear to be rough, and that might be the fact of our situation, but we understand that facts change all the time, and that the truth of the matter is that we have survived, and that we are victorious, and that we have our crowns, and our truth will always trump the fact of our situation. And so I just want to say, I'm here if you ever want to chat. My website is santresaw.com, which is right there, my name, w.com. I did write a book. It's called Releasing My Secret, a 30-day devotional to support your healing process. And even though my book was birthed because of my assault, it actually just deals with healing in our emotions. And I say it's not because it's my book. I use the book for myself sometimes when I'm going through. And so, what I've learned, it doesn't matter your race, your creed, your religion, the reviews that I've gotten, people have said that they have been uplifted and, motivated. And so even if you contact me, if you're not in New Jersey, I have sisters here, right here on this live, and who we could work together and pull together to find out what we have to do to help you and assist you out. Again, there's rape crisis lines. There's always RAIN that you could contact. And if you're having any type of situations, it's, again, it's information that's scrolling at the bottom of the screen, and I'm pretty sure it's filled with tons of information. Again, thank you for having me on. And just to keep your head lifted up high. Don't walk with your head held low, because again, you are victorious. You are a survivor. You have survived, and you will continue to thrive and continue to shine. Have a good
Awesome.
evening.
So they said so much.
Welcome.
But anyway, thank you, ladies, so much for joining to bring awareness. So to our viewers that are out there, SWAT's information is scrolling below. So any information that you need to know, you can, if you want to get in touch with these ladies, and you don't know how to reach out to them, you can always inbox me. You can find us on all social media under SWAT Inc. 2020. Um, if you find yourself in a sexual assault situation, domestic violence situation, and you need help, all you have to do is reach out to us. We will do whatever we can to get you the help or the assistance that you need. Again, remember, walking away is not always easy, but getting help, all of us need it. Again, we're all here. We'll do whatever we can to make sure you get the help that you need. Um, if any of you have any additional questions, if anyone come and look at this live later and you have questions, just put them in the comments. We're gonna follow it and we will answer you. I want you to know that you're not alone. Do not be ashamed of anything that you've been through. It's not your fault. You cannot be responsible for someone else's actions. The only person actions that you can be responsible for is your own. So I will say to you again, make sure you develop a safety plan if you are deciding to leave. Make sure you have the things that you need in place. I do know with most of the organizations, a lot of the funding, we're back up now trying to get funding. But just to put it out there, some of the funding was taken away. But it does not stop those that are passionate to get you the help that you need. Okay. So again, my information is scrolling. I'm gonna ask Coach Anisha under here to put their information. Once we come off the live, they put their information. So if you guys are in the Hampton Roads area, you can reach out to Miss Nisha or in New Jersey. And I know Coach, you're in New Jersey, correct?
Yes.
So, and if you're in North Carolina or any of the surrounding area, just reach out to us. Don't say that because we're not in your area, we cannot help. We all network with a group of people. And I can tell you, no matter where you are, from coast to coast, just come in, just reach out to us. We're here to help. And again, you're not alone. You no longer have to be silent. You don't have to be voiceless. Your voice has power. Your thrive has strength. Get up. You are worthy of everything and every purpose that's in you. All you have to do is just seek the help that you need. Again, for those who are told that therapy is not needed, counseling is not needed, don't listen to that advice because it's needed. You might have to fire. Hopefully, you don't have to be like me at 5:30. But if you do, do what you have to do for your sanity. Again, reach out to your local areas. They will let you know what organizations can help with whatever situation that you're going through. So on tonight, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you ladies again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you to our viewers for commenting, staying engaged. We really appreciate it. But I want to say to you all, be blessed and have an awesome night.
So,
Thank
take care. Thank you.